All right. Thank you very much. Happy New Year, gentlemen. Whoa.
You been here that long?
It's Welly and Manny Johnson. Listen, it is my pleasure this afternoon to introduce a decent Bahamian. Some of you may call him a Bahamian man, but I'm not sure what the connotations may suggest. So I would say a decent Bahamian. The Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries, the Honorable Lawrence Cartwright, is a member of Parliament for Long Island and Ragged Island. He is a teacher at heart, having spent most of his time in Long Island, and his career ended as a principal at the NGM Major High School in Buckley. I think his passion really is farming, which I believe drew him into the Ministry of Agriculture. He's active though in sailing and many other activities, and he has a love affair with his hometown. He's a member of the vestry of St. Paul's Anglican Church, so he's a comrade with those the likes of Bismarck and Phil. A good Anglican, consul of the diocese, Turks and Caicos Island. He's also married to former Teresa Antoinette or Annie Cartwright, and the couple has 3 sons. Fellow Rotarians and guests, let us welcome our speaker this afternoon, the Honorable Larry Cartwright.
Some of that table, man.
I always wonder how some people would know so much about you. Thank God for the internet.
Everybody knows the most, buddy.
Everybody knows what it is. Can't hear you. But President, President, past presidents, President-elect, all other officers of the Rotary Club of Western Providence, West Nassau, distinguished gentlemen. When I went to the internet to look up something on the Rotary Club, I found there that if you would have addressed the Rotary Club at some time in the past, you therefore refer to them as Rotary family. So, my Rotary family. It is a pleasure and an honor to be invited here to address you once again on the challenges facing agriculture in the Bahamas. Please accept my congratulations on the fine work you've been doing in this country and the several valuable contributions made to the various communities and groups. And let me commend you on your most recent activity, your bed race. I understand it was quite successful.
Oh yeah.
And very, very entertaining.
Yeah, we have excellent.
When I agreed to speak on the challenges facing agriculture, the word challenges touched me in the wrong place, I guess. And I started to think about how we could look at agriculture from a more positive view and speak about some of the practical value that agriculture has to our country and to you busy, service-minded people here in this room today. So I decided to tell you about some of the programs we have embarked on since my last address to you about 2 years ago, and how the interrelated issues will impact the agriculture sector moving forward. Just 2 matters I would like to address today. 1, food security, and 2, globalization. I will try to illustrate how my ministry proposes to address these issues, which are articulated in the ministry's 5-year strategic plan. Firstly, food security. The level of food imports is often seen as a measure of the success of the agriculture sector. Well, Mr. President, members, food imports into the Bahamas were estimated at some $419 million in 2009. And the rising level of food imports is not limited to the Bahamas alone. Across the CARICOM region and globally, rising food imports have been a cause for concern, increasing the vulnerability of the poor and in some instances taking on a political dimension which has resulted in food riots in some countries. There are several factors which are contributing to the high level of imports in the Bahamas. Domestic factors include the rise in incomes, the growth in population, and the change in dietary preferences since the 1970s, when food security was seen as an achievable goal. Externally, food has become cheaper to import due to the expansion globally in agricultural areas and increased yields due to mechanization and investments in mechanization and biotechnology. A review of imports indicated that there are significant imports of cereals, meat, and dairy from developed countries where the agricultural sector benefits from significant subsidies on the one hand, and on the other, there are fresh and processed food products from other developing countries where there has been significant investments in agriculture. The complex and often vague relationship between food security and agriculture has become clear to countries around the world and has even been raised by the G20 countries. Even the most developed agricultural systems are impacted by increasing instances of weather-related events which reduce food supplies. In countries like the Bahamas, which are dependent on food imports, increasing oil prices have double impact. Oil prices have a significant influence as an input affecting the cost production and hence the price at which products are sold, but also on the cost to transport food. In addition to the increasing speculation in agricultural commodity markets by investors, other challenges to food security for highly food import dependent countries like the Bahamas comes from the increasing incidences of export restrictions by producing countries. Over the past year, several countries have sought to reduce the volume of food sold on the international market. Examples include Russia, with respect to grain, the Ukraine, with respect to wheat, barley, and corn, and India, with respect to rice and sugar. And the list is growing daily. Agriculture in the Bahamas, though, remains a predominantly rural activity. According to the Department of Agriculture's Farmer Register, just over 80% of the registered farmers in our country are located on the Family Islands. Abaco has 15% of those farmers, Eleuthera 17%, Andros 25%, most of whom are in North Andros, Cat Island 23%, and the remaining 20% being spread among the other islands, including New Providence. The socio-economic indicators that are available suggest that on average, farmers are 60 years old. The average age of farmers is 60 years. They live in communities where the poverty levels are higher than the national average and range from 13% in Abaco, Eleuthera, and Andros to 21% in the southeastern islands. The overwhelming majority, nearly 90%, do not own the land they farm. On the supply side of the equation, most of the arable land in this country, and we do have a considerable amount of arable land, 134,000 acres on Andros, 50,000 acres in Abaco, 5,000 acres on Cat Island and Eleuthera respectively, most of this is not in production. A significant proportion is still in forest, virgin land, never being farmed. And on some islands, the best agricultural land is being lost to urbanization and other uses. Gentlemen, agricultural land cannot be made. If you use it for the wrong purpose, you can lose it, and once you lose it, you can never get it back. Either land is suitable for some type of production system, or you can spend a lot of money to try and make it suitable. The Land Resources Survey, which was completed in 1970, identifies all the agricultural land in the country. We know where the land is. When I say we, I mean governments from 1970 up until this time. Houses can be built on land of the lowest quality, and I don't mean wetlands. Land that is not suitable for agriculture can take houses, buildings. One of the most critical issues for us in the Ministry of Agriculture is ensuring that even if this generation of Bahamians do not want to develop the agricultural sector, that the opportunity to do so is not lost to subsequent generations. We want to try to preserve our agricultural land for those who would like to farm at some point in time in the future. One way to do this would be to zone all the agricultural land and limit its use to agriculture-related activities. During 2010, technicians from my ministry and the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, looked at the issue of improving food security and identified 5 cross-cutting constraints. 1, insufficient access to credit. 2, insecure land tenure systems. 3, the lack of disaster insurance. 4, inadequate marketing systems. And 5, inadequate extension services. These constraints all point to the need to increase investment in the agricultural sector. Insufficient credit speaks to the need for additional financial resources. Insecure land tenure to the investment in progressive policy measures to give producers security of tenure. Disaster insurance suggests the need to invest in disaster mitigation measures. Inadequate marketing system speaks to the need to invest in infrastructure, roads, ports, packing facilities, the development of standards and information management systems. And inadequate extension services suggest a need to invest in human resources to deliver service to farmers. But there are those who suggest that we should continue to import food if it is cheaper than locally produced food. I say to that definitely no. I cannot support that as a farmer and as the Minister of Agriculture, because a country that cannot have some means of feeding itself is less than a country. Given that 90% of farmers in the country do not have security of land tenure, it is not surprising that the average size of a farm in the Bahamas is 5 acres. It is also not surprising that the issue of access to credit is such an important constraint to the sector. Access to credit in the Bahamas is linked to the asset base of the client. As the saying goes in the Bahamas, talk is cheap, money buys money. Farmers in this country do not have the potential to own the one asset that could enable them to walk into a bank and have a decent conversation. But gentlemen, even with these challenges, the Ministry of Agriculture has made remarkable progress in the area of improving the productivity of small farmers through the use of improved seed varieties, crop management practices, and irrigation where this has been possible. However, the next step must be to provide people with the ability to expand farms and also to encourage new investment in the sector. This can be achieved by creating a dynamic market for agricultural land without losing the land to other forms of development. Creating a market for agricultural land will reduce the credit bottleneck that now exists and encourage greater innovation in the sector. As I touch on globalization, I promise I wouldn't be as long-winded as I was on food security. But Rotary friends, the globalization which is taking place around us is going to provide challenges as well as opportunities for the agricultural sector, depending on how much we are willing to invest in the sector. For the agricultural sector, trade liberalization is more than reducing the duty on imports. It also involves adopting international standards with respect to the so-called non-tariff barriers. These are the standards and guidelines related to sanitary or animal-related measures, phytosanitary or plant-related measures, and food safety measures which are applied at the border. Importantly, the standards which are applied at the border must also be applied to national standards. Whatever we expect of the food that's coming into our country, we should also apply to the food that we produce in our country. Given that we import a significant portion of our food, it is increasingly important for us to invest in the facilities and human resources so that we can provide assurances to the public that the imported food is safe. You know, you've heard so much in recent times about the amount of recalls of food that have been taken off the shelves in the Bahamas. And I'm sad to say that in some cases, by the time we got the news, the product had already been bought by consumers here in the country. This will require additional investment in laboratory facilities and inspection systems to verify that food meets the criteria which we have established. In addition to improving the quality of food consumed by Bahamians, an important benefit from investing in these so-called agricultural health and food safety systems will be the ability of agricultural products to be exported. In this regard, my ministry is in the final stages of drafting legislation on animal health, plant health, and food safety based on international standards and best practices, which will enable us to strengthen the institutional framework for these matters, as well as prepare us for WTO accession in the near future. In conclusion, it is my belief that the Bahamas, due to its land resources, can support a larger and more diversified agricultural sector. It is commonly observed that as countries go through development, the share of agricultural GDP tends to decline over time. However, agricultural output tends to increase in absolute terms. We will not see a more competitive agricultural sector and increases in crop output until there is an expansion in cultivated land. The growth of the sector will depend on investment in infrastructure such as roads, docks, and inter-island transportation systems, packing facilities, disaster mitigation strategies, and in human resources. The 5-year plan implemented by the ministry seeks to look at food security based on its 4 dimensions. 1, increasing availability of local foods. 2, improving access. 3, promoting nutritional adequacy through targeted programs and stabilizing supplies through on-farm incentive investments. And 4, the rehabilitation of packing houses. Further, at the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, we are strengthening our capacity to manage the process of globalization by modernizing the legislative framework as a first step to ensure that food we produce for ourselves and imports from the rest of the world are safe to eat. Mr. President, Rotary friends, it is our belief that when we achieve the goals set forth in our 5-year plan, we will be well on our way to food security. Allow me to thank you for the invitation and this opportunity to address you, and to commend you for your interest in the agricultural sector. I thank you.